guys, it has been a very long time since I have posted a video, but I will excuse myself a little bit because I have like 5 videos that I filmed and edited and everything, but I just never put them online. But hopefully I will be posting with more regularity now. So I'm here today with my July wrap-up. I ended up reading 8 books this month, which I thought was pretty good considering I was traveling for 2 weeks and then for 3 days I was at my college orientation, which was super exciting and super stressful. And yeah, I'm excited to start school though, sort of. So I thought 8 books was a pretty good number with all of that going on, and without further ado, I will get into the books that I read. The first book that I read this month was An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. I can't explain this book very well, so I'm not going to try. Plus, it's a really popular book, so if you haven't read it yet, you can go ahead and read the synopsis about it. But the reason I waited so long on reading this book was because I knew I would love it. I just knew, based on the synopsis alone, that I would love this book. And I was not disappointed whatsoever. The writing I thought was brilliant. The plot was brilliant. The world was brilliant. I loved the characters so much. It was just, I got so immersed in this book, even though I was on vacation when I was reading it, so I only read it in small chunks at a time. I was really, really into it, and it's definitely one of my favorite books I read this month, and I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I'm so excited. The next book I read was Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo, which is the first book in the Grisha trilogy. So I was so disappointed in this book. I wanted to love it. I thought I would love it. I loved Six of Crows. Six of Crows I thought was a masterpiece in YA fantasy. This book, Shadow and Bone, not so much. I just felt that this was one of the most mediocre things I've ever read. The plot was boring, the characters were boring, the writing was boring. The only thing that I found interesting in this book was exploring more about the Grisha world and a little bit more about Grisha powers. I thought it was cool that they were kind of described like a science and described in that scientific mindset. That was really interesting to me. But the rest of this book, no. And I don't understand why people love The Darkling so much. But I do think I will continue with this series because I want to see why people love it so much. I'm hoping it gets better. Overall, it was okay. I was just so disappointed in it that I couldn't enjoy it as much as I would have if I hadn't had high expectations. The next book I read was The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas. This is another book where I can't really explain why I waited so long to read it. I finished the Throne of Glass series in kind of a marathon at the beginning of January this year, and then after finishing Queen of Shadows, I just was not in the mood to jump into this, and I haven't been in the mood, but I decided to force myself to read it, and I'm so happy I did. Especially before Empire of Storms coming out this year, it was so nice to get back into Celaena's character and to learn more about her. If you didn't know, The Assassin's Blade is a collection of novellas that follow Celaena and her life as an assassin and the events leading up to her imprisonment at the beginning of Throne of Glass. And it was so nice to get back into her character. Honestly, she's probably my biggest fictional crush. I love Celaena. She's so good, and this was really an emotional book to read. Also, fun fact, I read this while I was in Quebec, where the drinking age is 18, so I was a little tipsy through the majority of this book, and I feel like Celaena would approve of that. I don't know. The next book I read, mostly on my plane ride home from Canada, was Outlander by Diana Gabaldon. This book is very well loved about a woman in 1945 who touches some standing stones in Scotland and is transported back to Scotland in the 1700s, I believe. We'll see. And overall, I know this is such a well-loved book, and I was expecting to love it too. It sounded like the kind of concept that I would really like, and it sounded super cool, but it just wasn't for me. I started this book in April, and I got about 200 pages in before I put it down and never picked it back up again. But I decided I did want to finish it, and I did like it a lot better as I continued to read. It definitely got better. It was hard to get into, but I was enjoying it a lot by the end. It was really fun to read. I just felt the writing style didn't always work for me, and there were a lot of plot points that seemed so pointless, and they did not really connect to anything for me, and I just felt the book could have been a lot shorter and I would have liked it better. But overall, it was a fun read. It has its problems, a lot of problems for me personally, and I don't think I'm going to be continuing with the series because this book was just a mediocre 3 out of 5 stars for me. and the series is so huge and all the books are so huge, I'm not going to commit myself to that after just having a mediocre first book read, but I do think I might start watching the series because I did enjoy this. It was fun. Maybe I'd like it more portrayed visually. I don't know. The next book I read was probably my favorite book that I read this month, and that was Vicious by V.E. Schwab. Vicious follows two superpowered people that were roommates in college and worked on a thesis together about these superpowers, which are called extraordinaries in this world, and they eventually become enemies. And it's kind of about them just trying to show down in this. And I really have been loving the anti-hero protagonist since I read The Young Elites this year. And this book definitely has a wonderful, wonderful anti-hero protagonist, and the characters are so good and so complex, and there were definitely X-Men vibes in here, and I love X-Men. I love the X-Men so much. If you like X-Men, you should talk to me because it's such a small fandom compared to the rest of Marvel. There's not a lot of X-Men fans. Anyway, back to this book. I thought the characters were so well done. I really liked how this book jumped through time. That really worked for me as well. And even the side characters were almost more interesting than the main characters. And I'm so excited to learn that it has a sequel because this is definitely one of my favorite books now. So, yay! The next two books I read I got from the library, so I don't have them with me. One of these library books was The Love That Split the World by Emily Henry. And this book is a magical realism book about a girl living in a small town in Kentucky, and she seems to be able to jump through time and dimensions almost, and it's kind of about this magical realism element of maybe there's two worlds. It's kind of confusing to explain, but it's very, very interesting, and I did not expect to love it as much as I did. I know technically there are a lot of problems with it. The writing is kind of repetitive, and the world building I thought could have been stronger if the book had been a little bit longer, but the book was exactly what I needed to read at that moment, and I did not expect to get so emotionally attached to the characters and the story, but I did, and I was crying so hard at the end of the book. It was just a really emotional read for me, and I was very pleasantly surprised, and that cover is beautiful. I wish I had it. The other library book that I read was Amy and Roger's Epic Detour by Morgan Matson, which is about a big road trip with Amy, a girl who just lost her father and is moving to Connecticut, and Roger, who is assigned to drive to Connecticut with her, and it is on a quest to get back his ex-girlfriend, and it's kind of about both their character development and their relationship development. And for a contemporary YA romance, which I don't usually read, it's not my favorite genre, I loved this so much. It was so good and such a fun read, and I felt like the romance was not the main focus, at least for me when I was reading it. It wasn't what I focused on, and it was a nice slow burn romance anyway, and it was just such a beautiful book. It was probably one of my favorite YA contemporaries now. And the final book that I read in the month of July is Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. I went to a midnight release party at my local Barnes & Noble, and the party was so fun. It was just so fun to see everyone gather together to celebrate Harry Potter, and it felt like old times, and I was just so excited about it. And then I came home and I read this. I just ingested it. So I have mixed feelings about this book. It's a play. I have mixed feelings about the play. Because it's a new Harry Potter story, like, I loved it automatically. I loved seeing all the characters again and kind of exploring the next generation, and I love Scorpius Malfoy. He's definitely my new favorite. What a cutie. And Scorpius and Albus, so good, so good. That's such a good ship, honestly. But the plot just felt kind of iffy, and spoiler alert here. So if you have not read The Cursed Child, can skip along to the end of this video when I'm not holding the book anymore. One thing that I was a little bit uncomfortable with was when Snape and Dumbledore appeared. I felt like JKR was taking all of the complaints people had about their characters, because Snape and Dumbledore were the characters that are probably the most controversial and people have the most, in my opinion, valid complaints about. And she kind of took that feedback she'd had years to think about and kind of tried to reinforce her vision of them in this book. Like with Snape, it was like, no, here's Snape as a good guy. He said he actually believes in this cause. And here's Dumbledore explaining his relationship with Harry and like, oh, he was afraid to love is to destroy. But I don't know. For me, that was a little bit uncomfortable. I didn't need to have that added in. Like, JKR, you don't need to explain yourself. People will have their opinions about these characters. I hate Snape. I am a firm Snape hater, so I still hate Snape after reading this book. But besides that, the alternate worlds were really cool, I thought. The Voldemort's daughter thing was not that cool, I thought. And Draco going full Zuko and joining the good guys at the end. Yes! Finally, Draco is with OG, Good Squad, Golden Trio and Ginny, and Draco. Oh, it was so good. So yeah, definitely a mixed emotional response for me, but very emotional and very happy to have had the chance to read this, I guess. So that concludes my July wrap-up, and those were the 8 books I read in July. Comment below your favorite book that you read in July, and if you're interested in seeing my TBR for August, I've already read 2 books in August, which were City of Thieves by David Benioff and The Perks of Being a Wallflower. If you're interested in seeing the rest of the books, I will read some updates from my month of reading in case I don't really post an update video, which I wouldn't be surprised because I've been really bad at posting videos. Follow me on Instagram at Alexa Reads Books or Twitter at Alexa Nicole, but the E in Alexa is a C. I'm just gonna link them below. And thank you for watching, and I will see you with a video soon. I promise I will try to keep posting once a week now. Goodbye!